Food security is generally defined as the ability of people to access safe and nutritious food in quantities that meet their dietary needs and preferences. That's the goal, but are we achieving it in Barbados? That's what we'll be looking at tonight as we discuss the topic, agriculture, ensuring food security. Tonight you have me, Stacey Russell, leading this discussion, and joining me for it are Acting Chief Agricultural Officer Michael James, Deputy Chief Agricultural Officer Barney Callender, and Chief Veterinary Officer Dr. Mark Trotman. Welcome to you all. We'll get into the details right after the break. Welcome back to the People's Business. Chief Agricultural Officer, Mr. Michael James. I'm going to start with you because you're the chief. Where are we in Barbados with agriculture and food security?
Well,
it's a big topic, isn't it?
It is a big topic. And one of the things I should say is that you made a very good impression and definition with respect to food security. The only thing you left out was affordability. So not only must you have access to it and that it must be safe, but it must also be affordable. But I think there's one thing we also have to look at is the whole issue of food sovereignty, where we learn to eat what we grow and grow what we eat. Because it's not always that we're going to be able to import, because food security looks at the aspect of being able to get this food from someplace. But we have to become more dependent on what we eat and grow what we want to eat. To that extent, we've had an up and down year. I mean, we've had a reduction in the overall production of crops. And that really dates back to a lot of what's been happening with the weather. We've had a lot of problems, you know, the flash flooding. Sometimes in the middle of the day, you get these downpours of rain. And it really has affected farmers because you can't do cultivation practices when the ground is so wet. So you can't get into the ground. And if you had crops that were already in the ground, say if you have seedlings that were in the ground, they come under that contact, that amount of rain, it can kill them. You have crops that are nearing, for that matter, that you're ready to pick them, you're ready to harvest. And we've had indications where a number of crops have been left. Watermelons have rotted, pumpkins have rotted, sweet potatoes even in the ground because of the inundated with a lot of water. That has brought a certain level of reduction in the yields of crops that we were over, say, in the last 2 years or so. So yes, we're down, but there's always a silver lining. We can look to improve techniques of doing agriculture. We can look at more varieties of crops, especially when you're talking about drought. You know, some days have been hot. Last year we recorded our highest temperature just over 34 degrees Celsius. That is hot. Most plants, and then my colleagues were talking about the animals, but a lot of they can't stand that amount of heat. So there are techniques. Some persons might say, okay, let's go and just grow things in greenhouses. There are only certain crops that can be grown under greenhouse conditions. Okay. The other crops, when you're talking about your field crops, your sweet potatoes, your yams, your cassava, are not grown in greenhouses. So there are aspects that we need to improve, which the ministry are putting things in place to enable us to meet more of our demand, not only to become food secure, but definitely to achieve that whole food sovereignty aspect of it.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you and talk about some of what you've just mentioned. For instance, farming in different ways.
Correct.
Perhaps in greenhouses. Some people call it vertical
Vertical
farming.
farming.
But I want to turn to the Deputy Chief now, Mr. Barney Callender. Give me your overview of where we are in terms of agriculture in Barbados and how we are to improve securing the ability to feed ourselves. What is your perspective?
Okay, we are at a stage now where we are transitioning from traditional farming into a more technological side of farming, when we try to use as much technologies that is available to us, new practices that can help to bring the cost of food down. Your definition, as Mr. James alluded to, affordability, the price and the cost of food is a little too high, and that's what is affecting maybe the security part of it. So we at the ministry is trying at the stage now, we're trying to make an impression or make a contribution to having the prices of food down by having different techniques, different methods of feeding, and in crops where we have different fertilizers that we can use, organic fertilizers, and livestock. We want to have a situation where we can bring the cost of that most important part of livestock, that's the feeding part of it, that price is down. And if that price keep on going up, the whole cost of livestock products is going to escalate. So we are at a stage now where we're trying to transition from the traditional farming into having new methods of feeding, so we can get the price down and make food more affordable to all.
Now, I'm sure that we all want to know how we can pay less for food. So tell me a little bit more about some of these new techniques that are going to be employed.
Okay, we in Barbados, we are, as you would say, we eat a lot of chicken. We are at a stage now where we're going to have a new project joining with the FAO by having the black soldier fly being part of the feed component. The chicken feed is very high in terms of protein. So we want to use the black soldier fly, not the adult, but the larva stage of the fly, to have that protein content. Most of the feed are composed of soybean, and soybean is actually 48% of crude protein. But the black soldier fly is component is 52%. So we are in a stage now we're setting up for FAO, an experimental program where we're going to use this fly for feeding. And it's not something that is only done in the Caribbean. The program involves Jamaica, Barbados, Grenada, in terms of having this program. But this whole feeding method is done across the world. Kenya have over 300 farms now producing black soldier fly for feeding purposes. Only early this year, Illinois in the United States have invested $10 million in a French-based company have invested $10 million in setting up a farm to really get this whole project going. So it's something that is worldwide, and we want to, in Barbados, be part of it in terms of feeding our poultry.
I'm curious, just tell me a little bit more about the black soldier fly. Tell us.
Well, it's a fly that is occurring natural in Barbados and in the region. So it is available to most of us. It's not something that is, I would say, I want to say dirty, but it's something that is beneficial. When the cost-benefit analysis was done, it shows that it's worthwhile having this insect for the purpose of feeding. So it's not the adult fly, it's the larval stage of the fly that we will use for feeding. You know the old saying that the early bird gets the worm. So it's that part of the life cycle that we will be using, and it can be used as a live feed, or it can be commercialized into pellets or incorporated into feed.
Before I move on to Dr. Trotman, tell me, how are farmers responding to this new program? How many of them have indicated an interest?
We are at the stage at the moment when we are constructing the building. It's embarked stage. We haven't started the program as such, but we are constructing a building where we're going to start the whole process. But there's one farmer who met me on Friday and told me that she's interested in the program. So as soon as the message gets out there, people are doing a lot of reading, and I'm quite sure that we're going to have some people who will be interested in the program. And I can't wait to taste a bird or chicken that is fed from the black soldier fly.
And on that note, we're going to take our next break from the People's Business. Welcome back to the People's Business. Tonight we're discussing agriculture, ensuring food security. And before we went to the break, we were talking with the Deputy Chief Agricultural Officer, and he was talking about a new project that is going to be coming on stream, about how we're going to be feeding, some of our animals differently going forward. And now I want to turn to the Chief Veterinary Officer, Dr. Trotman. We've been hearing just this week about chicken shortage in Barbados. Why is this happening? Is it how we're feeding them? Is it just the environment in terms of the heat and the changing weather that we've been seeing? What are the issues?
It's a complex issue. We have been having for some time challenges with endemic diseases, which have caused low productivity or lower productivity with respect to some of the poultry in the island. And that's a very difficult issue to get a handle on. It's more of a management solution that we need to deal with. But the recent challenges have nothing to do with disease. That the disease profile of the chickens have not changed. We have no new diseases coming into the country, although we are threatened constantly by the introduction of foreign diseases. We've been able to keep those out successfully to date. The big problem right now, as far as we can understand, is the heat, the excessive heat that we've been having. Mr. James referred to the fact that we have been experiencing the hottest period that we have ever done in history, relating to recorded history, recent history, I should say. And poultry, all animals are very susceptible to heat in terms of their productivity. Cows don't produce as much milk. Chickens don't grow as fast. Chickens are very susceptible to excessive heat. They die from excessive heat stress. And this is what seems to be one of the underlying challenges, recent challenges with our poultry. And it's a challenge that it's environmental. It is unless you have ventilated housing to combat that, and many small poultry farmers do not have that, and so they are at the mercy of the elements where the heat is concerned. That is where the challenge is right now. We've been experiencing extremely high temperatures. Poultry just cannot handle it. Some of them don't grow as well. Some of them die from it. That's the reality.
Is that the only challenge?
That is the primary challenge. As I said, we do have some endemic viral diseases, a few bacterial diseases, which low-grade diseases, no massive outbreaks or of illnesses that you can say is a major factor. But no, there are no diseases coming into the country causing animals to die, poultry to die. It is the environmental situation that exists right now as a result of the ambient heat.
And can you speak to how farmers are dealing with that situation of the environmental impact on their birds?
I think most of them are trying to improve ventilation in their pens, making sure that there's adequate airflow through the pens. Those that have climate-controlled houses are able to manage the heat that way. But for most small farmers, who really do not have ventilated houses, they'll do the best they can, possibly by installing, what they can do is install misters and fans to try and alleviate the heat on the animals.
So what assurances do we really have, the population, about getting our chicken on the shelves in supermarkets?
I think that it was such an unusual period of heat that we were not really prepared to. I mean, we experience heat every year, but not like this one. So I think I can't speak for the farmers, and we probably have to have discussions with the farmers, but they will probably be starting to take, I know that there are some programs that we're trying to put in place with the Ministry of Agriculture to try and assist farmers in retrofitting the houses in order to improve ventilation in the houses so that the animals don't suffer as much as they do now.
Chief, what can you say about the help that farmers can get?
That Mark didn't mention is that some farmers, because of that, actually reduce the amount of birds per pen.
Yeah.
So that is one of the things that actually then reduce the number of chickens that you get. Remember that the ministry usually gets information by the number of chicks that have been sold, which are called placement orders. And we use that to say how many birds that should be available. But one of the things, as Mark was saying, is that we rely on the farmers to gather information on mortality rates. And unfortunately, some farmers are not as forthcoming as they should. And Mark was saying that one of the ways that we are looking at is looking to improve the whole ventilation practices. Probably we will need, I remember me and Barney was talking recently about doing a complete overhaul of some of the pens, especially for small farmers. In larger farmers, they will probably need to increase the type of ventilation they have. But the other farmers who have small numbers, but they're still, those are the ones that sell to the next doors and to the local persons. They're looking at making sure that they have no pens that can handle or allow the chickens to handle that heat. So you also remember that we also have a rebate system within the ministry. As a registered farmer, you can come into the ministry as long as you're a registered farmer, and as long as you want to do any rehabilitation of your pens. There's a $2 million agreement, well, a loan, a revolving loan through BAS, where farmers can use that to help, in this case, to help alleviate all of this heat and so forth on the chickens. So there are things there. We find that persons are hesitant sometimes to come in for the rebates.
Why?
I don't know. Some of it could be our fault. I mean, I'm the first to say some persons might not know, and that's one of the things that we're getting out there. We have a new IT guy, and we're trying to get that online. We're trying to become more digital, so persons don't have to come in to write up something. That can be done online. So we're moving towards that to make it easier for the farmer. No one wants to travel all the way from St. Lucie or Christchurch to come down to Graham Hall to sign the form or whatever. So we're trying to get that there online. But it is there. I mean, last year, between this time, we put out over $1.5 million with respect to rebates. This year, we're just about $750,000. Okay? So we need farmers to know. So we need to get the message out there. Some farmers know, and who know, they come in. But we are advancing that to get that out there, increasing our visibility, our public awareness, public education through programs like this, to allow farmers to know, yes, you can come in and get these rebates as long as you're a registered farmer. And with that, we will also want you to let us know information gathering is important. We cannot plan unless we have information. And it must be a two-way street. We give you information, you give us back information. But it cannot work where we're giving you rebates and whatever. And it's definitely, there's a secrecy act. So therefore, whatever information you give us, we can't just give it anybody. It relates to if you have mortality in terms of the birds, if you're having problems with respect to your crops. We should not have to wait and hear, oh, well, we're having a problem with our orchards. Okay? If you have a problem, call. We do have some extension officers, not as much as we would like, and hopefully we can get that increase. But they are there, and they have numbers that you can call. The same way you can go on social media and get on bad when we do nonsense, or you think that we're not doing what we do. Therefore, you can do the same thing on social media and say, well, look, we have a problem here. Come and give me a hand.
Okay. I want to move on to milk and the shortage of it. I see that we're now bringing in milk from Guyana. We've heard about plans to import some cows. Mr. Callender, can you speak to that?
Yeah, milk production, as far as my research in recent time, is done throughout the world. It stems from the fact that there's a reduction in heifers. And that is the issue where here in Barbados, where there were not enough heifers to continue the whole process of producing milk. What the ministry is doing at the moment, because there must be replacement heifers, and there must be a program for replacing all the cows on your farm, if your farm is going to be sustainable in terms of producing milk. So what we are doing at the moment, we are engaging at least 5 farms at the moment in a program where we are using sex semen so that the farms will only have heifers, because before the outcomes can be bulls or heifers. But we are engaging 5 farms and we are inseminating their cows with sex semen. What that is doing is providing a situation where they only have heifers on their farms. And if we have that resource, then it's a situation where we can be sure that there will be milk.
Now, I'm happy to hear about what we're doing to ensure that we increase the number of heifers that we actually have on island. But what about those that are supposed to be coming from overseas to help us with our milk production in the meantime? I understand that we were supposed to have some by September. Where are they?
Well, they're I'll let the vet speak on it, but will be coming in sometime in December.
So we pushed back the time.
And they'll be 3 to 5 months pregnant. So you would not see a difference in the production not till about sometime around March or April.
Dr. Trotman?
Yeah, so we do have a shipment of pregnant heifers coming in December. That's fixed. Permits have been issued. Arrangements have been made to ship the animals in from Canada. These animals will come in. They'll be quarantined for 30 days in 2 locations to make sure they don't bring any infectious diseases with them. My department will oversee that to make sure all of the animals that land are healthy, and then they will go to their respective farms and they will start, as Mr. Callender said, these animals are pregnant. They're not going to be milking, but soon after they come in, they'll give birth and then they'll start to produce milk, and we should have local milk. I do want to clarify something, because you mentioned that we had imported milk from Guyana. Barbados is one of the few countries in the Caribbean that actually produces fresh milk. Any imported milk that we brought, including the milk that came in from Guyana, is reconstituted milk from milk powder, not fresh milk. We do not import fresh milk to compete with our local dairy industry.
Okay.
And we have not done that for quite some time. So it's a different market. It's a different thing altogether. So that is where we need to get productivity picked up. Our production of fresh milk.
Fresh milk.
Right.
Okay.
That is what we're working on doing with these cattle coming in December.
Well, we're taking a break now, and we'll be right back with more of the People's Business, and then we'll start taking your calls. In the meantime, you can take the number. It's 228-5562 or 228-5563. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the People's Business. Tonight we're talking agriculture and how food secure we are here in Barbados. I have with me the Chief Agricultural Officer, the Deputy Chief Agricultural Officer, and the Chief Veterinary Officer. And I want to now turn to talking about crops. We spoke about the new project coming on stream to better feed the animals.
Yeah.
We spoke to the chicken shortage, how we're dealing with that. We spoke to the milk shortage and how we're dealing with that. Now, crops. Tell me.
Okay. Now, as you mentioned, crops is a interesting thing because a lot of persons think that when you're growing, farming is a business and agriculture is a science. So it's not like you can just do anything. And what the ministry is doing, we're looking, as Barney said before, and as Mark was saying, is that we're looking out to go into different technologies to improve aspects of farming. Some farmers have already gone that route. We are not only looking at improve varieties of plants to bring in, we're looking to see what drought-tolerant plants there are. So they've got different drought-tolerant varieties that we'll be testing at the ministry. And then you're also looking at different ways of growing. Now, remember when people talk about growing open field, when we spoke about the whole issue of open field where you had some of the plants rotting and so forth, some persons might think, oh, well, then we bring everything inside. As I mentioned before, every crop cannot be grown in that sort of environment.
Now, I'd like you to hold that thought.
Go ahead.
We have a caller on the line.
All right.
Stick a pen there.
Go ahead, caller.
Good evening to you and your panel, ma'am.
Good
I
evening.
would like to pick up on the point made by the chief officer about land as distinct from greenhouses. We have lots of land, and all I see on that land is bush. When are we going to start using our land effectively? Secondly, the question of water. When I was a child, we had gutters. When I was a child, we had gutters that took water off the roads into wells. We had wells that were cleaned regularly in the fields, which aided in terms of, I suppose, irrigation or in terms of keeping the fields not over damp or over wet. When are we going to return to the old tried practices that made us, especially in the wartime, food secure? Our Prime Minister talks about big grain rice. How many children in Barbados know what big grain rice was? And why are sweet potatoes so expensive and yam and breadfruit? Those are my questions.
Mr.
You touch on a lot of
Mr.
topics. Touch on a lot of
Chief
topics there.
Agricultural Officer.
Yes. Okay. Let's get down to business here. All right. In relation to
Utilizing-
a lot of lands,
utilizing the
the different
lands.
lands and whatever that, you got to remember a lot of the lands are still under private ownership. Those lands that are under ABC, that's a new company that's growing sugar cane. Remember that you have to have lands that you have to have a rotation. So once you're growing cane, you still have to have rotation crops so that it can't remain perpetually in the sugar cane. You have to have a time it comes out and you put it into another crop. What happens is that there's some persons who, for want of a better word, just leave the lands to fallow. Now, that is a policy decision that has to be made, that those persons who have lands that don't want to grow, that something is done with that. But the lands that are under the government through BADMC, that's the Barbados Agricultural Development and Marketing Corporation, there are actually plans to increase. We're talking about advancement of about 15 different crops over the next 6 months or so, short, medium, and long-term crops that will be grown. So you see a lot more lands under cultivation, and those lands range from those in the south, in Christchurch, to those right down in St. Lucie. So there are a number of lands that are currently, even in Pine Basin, that are currently now being cultivated. Some have been planted already, even at Lears. Those are all lands that will be put into this increased production plan that will be run through the BADMC. He spoke about the whole issue of not cleaning wells and whatever. There's a program called the NICART program, all right, which looks at cleaning of the wells, and it talks about regeneration and aquifer regeneration, where you look at cleaning the wells as well as planting cactus grass to avoid a lot of the soil being washed away. So the ministry, because that program now falls under, that used to fall under what was then the BAMC, it now falls under the BADMC. So we are trying to do that. But further from that, they've also had catchment areas. There's one at Lears. They show when you pass Lears, you see that large pond that holds up to 22 million gallons of water. There's one in St. Philip that they've done, and they're doing one down St. Lucie. And there are plans to do more. Plus, there's another program that is probably about 2-3 years in the making, where they're going to use then treated water now, tertiary treated water, and that's going to be piped from down at Graham Hall, where we are now, right along up to River Plantation, and farmers can connect there. Okay? So there's not like we don't have plans, but it calls for farmers and the ministry now sitting down and really talking and ensuring that what the plans are can be actually put in place. So I understand what the call is talking about, big grain rice, sweet potatoes and whatever. We need to get persons back eating those sort of things. We only eat it now and put it in themselves. All right? Remember when you used to eat, you used to have a slice of sweet potato beside your rice. Those things we probably need to come back. BADMC, they're not just looking at the primary product. They're also now looking at product that you can get. You have sweet potato flour for those who might be gluten intolerant. You can use those flours out of the same breadfruit. The high cost of breadfruit, we do not set prices. And that's one of the things people must understand. And you will find, and as thing when we talk about affordability, a lot of persons do not even fertilize their breadfruit trees and whatever. But as the breadfruits come out and whatever, it bears no resemblance to what the true cost of the breadfruit is. Whatever the market can take, people will sell the breadfruit for. Yeah? So how can we go and tell a man, you must sell your breadfruit for $3? Okay? What we might be able to do is, and it's something we look at one time we imported a number of dwarf breadfruit trees. You can still see them along the highway that came through the Ministry of Agriculture. And those are the things we are looking to do. And that's what I meant by improving varieties. All right? So those are some of the things that we are doing and will increasingly do. Now, the whole issue of looking at different areas, I stopped by the whole thing of greenhouse farming. Yes. As I said, everything can't be done greenhouse. You have things like what they call freight farming, where you grow things in a container. Everything can't be grown in there.
What can we grow in
You
containers?
can mostly grow things in there, and those things like leafy vegetables, your herbs and spices, Sometimes tomatoes can be grown in your tomatoes, and aubergine and watermelons to some extent can be grown in those things, but it all depends on the farmer. You must think, people think that because it is in greenhouse, that is easy. It calls for a level of sophistication. It is more, you have to put more into it. Okay, you got to know when to cut those plants. You got to know when to trellis them. So there's a lot more involvement than sometimes when you have an open field. So those are the things that we have actually set up greenhouses at the ministry, and that is what we'll be doing. When you look at vertical farming, you have vertical farming pods, and we have one right now in the Ministry of Agriculture set up where you can grow lettuces again, mostly leafy vegetables. And we have it in the ministry. Anybody want to pass in and take a look at it? We have one right in the ministry.
Now you talk about what you have in the ministry and what is possible, but to what extent are these possibilities being expanded to the farming community?
Now, it's like anything else. If you tell a farmer go and do something and you can't back it up with information on how to do it, or is it cost? Am I going to get some profit out of this? Because if it's too expensive, you're not going to get the buy-in. So what we're doing, we're actually growing it. We're doing it so we can get the cost-benefit analysis to say, yes, you can make money on this. We are not going to tell you do something unless we know how to do it. Because when you come back and you say, James, I growing this thing and it got problems, what am I going to tell you? I don't know. If I'm introducing you to something, I should know what are some of the risks, what are some of the diseases that might occur because you've gone in now doing a different type of farming. So that's what we're doing, just like the soldier fly. When it comes down, there are some farmers that probably will have to do this. But we have to know what are some of the disadvantages, what are some of the things you might run into when you're doing this. You can only do it by us doing it experimentally and then having that information to transfer to the farmer.
We have another caller on the line. Caller?
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am. My question is more about monkeys control. Hello? Yeah, hello?
What do you want to know about the monkey population?
Yeah, in terms of the havoc that it gives to farmers that doing different root crops and different crops on the whole. How we can, what is the ministry's plans for controlling the monkeys besides just saying to take them to the wildlife reserve or anything like that?
I'll start and then I'll hand over to Mark. There's a plan, and we had actually written it out and put certain things in place in how we are going to control it. In terms of, first thing, getting an idea of what the true population is. As Mark will tell you, you have a lot of anecdotal evidence of what the true population is. So that's one of the things we're looking at. The other way is that some persons have actually identified that you can look at making them sterile. So there are a number of different things that people have said you can do, but I'm not a vet. So one of the things that and you still have to look at making sure, because it's a animal that thinks, that has feelings, so you have to be careful on how you do your control.
Well, we have the chief veterinary
So the
officer
chief
here.
will speak to that some more, but what I'm saying is that some persons think it's just as easy as go, let's just take them out. You must remember the two things. One, they were brought here and they don't have any natural enemies.
Okay.
The other thing is that over time, we have literally taken away some of what or where they used to live. So you're fighting for space. So how do we balance the need to control with the need also to conserve? And that is where Mark will
Dr.
come in.
Trotman, tell us, please.
Yeah, I think that what Mike mentioned is very valid. The animals were brought over 350 years ago. They have now become acclimatized to the country. They are practically indigenous to Barbados. And monkeys have become iconic in Barbados. A lot of symbols representing the monkey are synonymous with Barbados now. So there is a certain value to the image of the monkey. We have the Barbados Wildlife Reserve, which displays them as a major tourist attraction on the island. And people like to see, I'm talking about the this other side of the monkey issue. People actually like to see the monkey in the wild, in the areas.
But they're threatening our farmers.
But they are threatening our farmers. To what extent, we need to find out. We know that there are an agricultural challenge. They have been an agricultural challenge since, I think, the 1700s. They were recognized as an agricultural challenge. And so we need to find a way to balance the challenges that the monkeys present to the farming community with the benefits and the I don't know what if to say, the right of the monkey to exist.
How are we going to find that way?
By controlled culling, by scientifically studying the animal, knowing what the population size is, knowing what challenges that, quantifying the problem. I think we need to quantify it. We need to identify where they are, what the population size is. And then, I'm not opposed, while I am very much pro animal welfare, making sure that we don't treat these animals cruelly. I think controlled culling so that we end up with a sustainable population, not to eradicate the monkey from the country, but to end up with a sustainable population that can coexist with the farmers and the crops that we produce. And that takes study, that takes programs. There are several techniques and methodologies that have been proposed. The monkey issue really falls under the ambit of the Ministry for the Environment.
Okay.
They're the competent authorities for wildlife. They have prepared a very comprehensive booklet, or book, quite frankly, on guidelines as to how things that you can do, deterrent methodologies that you can put in place. And I would certainly recommend anyone who is looking to try and find ways to control the monkeys to take a look at, to get a copy. It's actually, you can actually get an electronic copy. You don't have to get a paper copy. Read it and see if there are methodologies proposed in that booklet that they may be able to use.
Okay.
To help themselves.
I have to take another call.
Okay.
There's someone else who would like to get in on the program.
Sure.
So thank you so much for expanding on that and how we can possibly start dealing head on with this monkey situation. Caller, go ahead.
I understand the point being made about culling, but why are we afraid to cull? I have the impression from the Minister of Agriculture himself that we, because of the tourist attraction of the monkeys and because of what you call the iconic position of the monkeys, are afraid to cull. Why? When will the culling start?
When will the culling start?
The culling goes on as we speak. We have a number of registered hunters listed in the Ministry of Agriculture. These are very active hunters that go out to areas where the monkeys are creating a problem. They are shooting the monkeys, collecting them. My department is responsible for verifying the animals once they're killed. So culling goes on as we speak, has gone on for quite a while. We have recently raised the bounty to compensate the farmers, I think, to $25. $25. It used to be $15. It's now gone up to $25 a tail.
Okay.
That we have in place there to compensate farmers doing this work.
Okay.
What needs to be done? It needs to be done scientifically. We need to establish a quota so that we end up with a sustainable population. That we don't want to eradicate the monkey. We want to control it.
Okay.
And that's through controlled culling.
And then there can't be a Wild Wild West. You can't have everybody going there with a gun deciding you're going to shoot. So it is highly registered. Persons must be registered to shoot the animals, and that is very, very definitely, we have them under tight scrutiny. So everybody can't decide, oh, I'm just going to shoot a monkey. It doesn't work that way.
We're taking a break now, and we'll be back with the People's Business. Welcome back to the People's Business. Tonight, we're talking agriculture and how secure we are with our food, being able to sustain ourselves, to do so affordably. And we have a caller on the line, and we're going to take that call before I get back to the gentlemen who are here with us in the studio. Caller?
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
The doctor spoke about persons liking to see the monkeys. But I think the only person who like to see monkeys now are persons who don't have anything planted and who don't experience the destruction that they bring about. I have several mango trees that bear, and I cannot get 2 mangoes from a tree. How do we continue to exist and survive if we can't sell mangoes to help pay our land tax or to feed other persons, feed ourselves, our families? We need to do something and stop all the talk, because all we're hearing is talk, talk, talk.
Is it all talk?
No, as the doctor alluded to earlier, monkeys are affecting agricultural products or fruits or vegetables. But it's not only an agricultural problem. These animals are in the wild, and it's a problem that must be dealt with by other ministries. It's not easy to control a monkey, I can tell you that. There are a lot of techniques that have been used over the years. India is one of the countries which have a lot of issues with monkeys, and they have employed various techniques, ultrasound, which seems to work pretty well. It's a technique that
Disrupt the ears.
Disrupt the ears. I spoke to a company some time ago, trying to get one of the devices to come to Barbados on an experimental basis. I will explore that again, but that is something that can be used. There are a lot of techniques that, well, people have been recommended that worked, but it's a very, very, very difficult task to control the numbers in terms of what you have planted. So I think together, the various ministries to get together and see how best we can work together to bring some relief to farmers, because I experience it, how people have planted so many things, and at the point of harvesting, they lose it. And that is not easy if you put so much inputs into something, and then at the time when you're looking to get returns, it's gone. So it's a very difficult problem, and I think we at the ministry have done our best over the years to try to see how best we can control the problem, but it's difficult.
One of the things
Our time
before
has...
we go ahead quickly is that we have to stop using them as Mark saying. Some people that just go and feed them, and they become now accustomed to human beings, so they're not frightened, they don't fear us as much now, and that is an issue. People must stop using them as pets, and that they're wild animals. You treat them as such, but don't have them. You're throwing bananas there so they can come, and that can be a recipe for disaster.
Okay, I was just about to say that our time has gone pretty quickly, and we now have to begin wrapping up. I want to come back to the Chief Veterinary Officer, Dr. Mark Trotman. I want you to perhaps use the monkeys as an example of how you're planning to deal with identifying, IDing, and tracing animals in Barbados. Tell me about that program, those plans.
Okay, interesting segue, but I will try to use it that way. We have rolled out an animal identification and traceability program where we are using tags and microchips to identify mainly livestock for many reasons.
And this couldn't be used for the monkeys. Because you were saying earlier, I know we're wrapping up.
Yeah.
But you were saying earlier, you don't know the monkey population.
Yeah.
You don't know how to deal with them.
Yeah.
And I know whilst we want to deal with those animals that we're benefiting from in terms of getting our food, and that's very important.
Yeah.
perhaps it can be extended to the monkey
The
population?
technology can be used for that. There are other technologies that also can be used to identify the monkey population,
Okay.
and to trace their movement around. You know, 'cause monkeys are they're nomadic. They move back and forth every day. They'll move from one location to another, so they're very mobile.
Okay, but tell us
But
about
this is about identifying animals. One of the principal goals that the government has with this is to address this issue of predial larceny, theft of animals. And so, and that's only one facet of this whole program. There are so many things that this can be used for, where we can identify your animals, your livestock. So in the event that they are stolen, while we don't necessarily have the technology, we have the technology, but it would be cost prohibitive to be able to satellite track the animal around, but it permanently identifies the animal and links that animal to a database with your name and contact information on it. So if the animal is stolen and recovered, we have positive proof that this is your animal that has been stolen. And we did have an example not too long ago where we had some sheep stolen from the ministry's flock, and we caught them. The police caught the thieves, and were able to identify the animals as belonging to the Ministry of Agriculture. So we know the technology works. So
Has
predial
the
larceny is the
program
main one.
actually started?
Yes, it's rolled out, and anybody can take advantage of it. It is free of cost right now. We just need to have farmers contact us and say they want to have their animals identified. Right now, we're mainly focusing on sheep and goats, but it will be rolled out for all livestock in the long term. And if you have a cow that you want to identify, yes, we can microchip it, we can tag it, and we can list it so that we have a record of its existence, which protects it gives you ownership of the animal. It's also for traceability, where we can track the animal from farm right through slaughter to consumption. So this is for food safety purposes. It functions like that. You have a database that you can use to manage your animals, your population of animals. That's another reason why this product works out, is beneficial. For disease control purposes, if we have an outbreak of a disease, this program allows us to track the animals so we know which animals are exposed to disease and which animals are not exposed to disease. So it's an amazing program. It is available. The Veterinary Services is managing it. It is free of cost. It is free of cost as long as we can afford it. So I would strongly encourage farmers to take advantage of it. Contact us. Let us know your information. We will send, a technician out to microchip your animals, to tag them, and to record and make a record of them.
Well, gentlemen, we have run out of time officially, but I will give you 5 seconds each. What do you want to say finally before we go?
Well, one of the things is the whole issue of re-engaging with farmers and making sure that information that we have is circulating and can get to farmers. And one way of doing that is to make sure that we know who the farmers are. And to that extent, we are having, for the first time since 1989, we're going to have a census next year, 2025. So I look forward to that.
Mr. Callender?
We want to focus on trying to make food more affordable by reducing the cost of inputs so that food will be available for all Barbadians.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Chief Agricultural Officer, Mr. Michael James. Wow, you almost took my breath away there for a moment. And the Deputy Chief Agricultural Officer, Mr. Barney Callender, and our Chief Veterinary Officer, Dr. Mark Trotman. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us tonight on The People's Business, where we discussed agriculture and ensuring food security in Barbados. I'm Stacey Russell. Thank you so much for joining.